Well met, lords and ladies. Jacob Butter speaking in a wet welcome to this week's Walking Wednesday. You know, this is just my bad luck, but it started raining as soon as I was about to turn my camera on. So, yeah. Fun when that happens, isn't it? So, anywho. Another quiz day, but I'm actually not by the grounds this time, because I needed to actually go and actually make a withdrawal for several reasons. I was going to do a transfer as well, but it turns out that the only ATM around here does not allow that to happen. So I might have to find somewhere else for that to occur, which is fantastic. But oh well, I'm here now, and I'm going to avoid the traffic, and I'll talk about the quiz despite the fact that we're not actually there itself. That was 2 slips in a row, jeez. Something happened in that spot. Anyway, yeah, so this time, of course, it was Christmas themed, because why on earth wouldn't it be? In fact, actually, there are even more questions than normal. We're wondering, oh yeah, they're going to be able to make a theme out of everything to do with Christmas. And I think because I don't normally do that, you know, there wasn't like a full Halloween theme or something for October. But actually, this time, well, because Christmas is like so broad and there are so many things that have been, you know, put into it, and celebrations and everything, that yeah, we actually, they actually had a full-on a field day with coming up with things. Which way am I going to go? Yeah, there's so many people coming out of all these different areas at this time. No wonder I'm normally up in the relative isolation. Yeah, so of course we did a little bit of revision beforehand, but my revision didn't really lead anywhere because mine was on the 13 Yule lads in case they came up. Yeah, I'm not sure like how popular the Yule lads actually are, because I mean, of course, I was first introduced to them when I was at drama school, because one of my classmates was Icelandic, so you know he talked about them, you know, to a decent amount. Then, of course, there was Avantris, so I thought they were kind of catching on as more of a widespread source of knowledge, but maybe not to the extent of random pub quizzes. So, lesson learned, I suppose. But anyway, we actually we actually made a decent go through of everything, despite the fact there were even actually more questions. I kind of undersold it earlier. You know, there weren't just all rounds that were Christmas themed. There were more questions than normal for one of the rounds, the last one. And there were 2 music themed ones, actually. So the first one was actually around languages, and that one was, you know, that was the first. Well, I say that it's technically they count as round 2 because round 1 is the Dingbats, which were all Christmas themed, like I thought they might be. If anything, there was one that we actually kind of got. The only one that we got wrong, actually, was one that we couldn't actually find a Christmas theme for specifically. But trying to really scratch our heads around that one. Because like I said before, with Dingbats, that's normally what happens. You know, we solve most of them almost immediately, and then there are a couple we struggle with for some time, and then afterwards there's 1 or 2, in this case 1, that takes us the entire night. Which, when there are 2 music themed rounds, is not great for communication. Oh, I forgot to mention, we were down 2 members this time, compared to our usual, well, I say our usual 1 or 0, but yeah. So yeah, one of my aunts couldn't make it, and neither could my cousin. So yeah, it was just my other aunt, my parents, and myself, and which did mean 2 bonus points basically. But you know, that's those only get you so far when it comes to these events. Although it must be said, the team that normally wins also was down 2 members, and they won by 1 point. So, had they all been there, they probably would have scored them anyway. But, you know, it's just one of those things. So, and actually, I finally met them. It turns out that they were the table behind us this time, because we've got a smaller table, so we were, I guess, nearer to the back. Because they don't normally draw attention to themselves. They have, you know, there's almost kind of like a, they understand there's a lingering resentment towards them now. Although, as I mentioned before, I found out that, you know, a couple of quizzes ago, I think it was in October, from one of the hosts, that they were actually at one point down to 3 members. Then they had to re-diversify their roster and came back and rose to be the for a time undefeated champions. I'm not counting our victories as defeating them because those happen to coincide with their absences. There was one time recently where they actually came 3rd. That was last month actually. They came 3rd, and then we came 5th. So, you know, it wasn't wasn't a huge moment for. It wasn't like a moment where, like, oh yeah, we're going to rise to the occasion. No, unfortunately not. Yeah. But okay, so back to the quiz. So yeah, first round languages, second round technically, whatever. Yeah, that one was what they played us several songs from around the world in different languages, and we had to specify which languages they actually were. The first couple were relatively easy. They were easily identifiable: French and German. I think one of them was literally just Stille Nacht. So, you know, from my personal history, actually, you know, personal history makes all the difference, Mega. I actually knew about that one from a long time ago when I studied German, actually, for a year in primary school. So, yeah. And of course, that was before the Christmas truce 100th anniversary, in which we sang it again in secondary school. So yeah, easy identifiable. And then there was, and then of course the one in Spanish was the most obvious one of all. Of course, it was Feliz Navidad, which I say that actually. There was a question later on in another round that was, how do you say Merry Christmas in Spanish? Which I feel like, you know, if they played that beforehand in a song would give it away for some people. But actually, the group that we marked got it wrong. They got Felicidad, which just means happiness. So, you know, of course I was like, nope, don't mark it. Absolutely not. There were a couple of ones in the from the people that we marked where, you know, I was very strict on the results. They because one of the dingbats was U equals the totality of my seasonal demands, which of course translates to all I want for Christmas is you, which was also a question that came up later. Anyway, there was some repetition, but ultimately they got used to another Christmas theme. So yeah, so they actually said something like, you know, you are all I want for Christmas or something, to which I say, no, that does not count, because it is, you know, like one of the most famous Christmas lyrics of all time. As much as I'm personally not a fan of that song anymore, like it's one that I'm more than familiar with, actually. One that I was asked to sing a number of times in sixth form, actually, but that's beside the point. In fact, actually, we sang it in choir at one point, which was honestly kind of fun. But yeah, whatever. Complicated feelings aside, what was I going to say? Yeah, so I was just like, no, don't mark it. It's a very famous lyric. They shouldn't. No. And then the faith that was, of course, you know, it's like, no, definitely not. In the end, that team happened to come last. They announced all of the people who came last this time, and also handed them a wooden spoon, which, you know, my mum did point out was kind of bad practice on their part. Normally they don't they don't announce anyone below bottom 5th, and there were exactly 12 groups this time, which is important for reasons I'll get to later. But yeah, this time, because everyone performed so well, and the lowest score was 45, which is occasionally near the highest scores on other quizzes that they've done. I guess they got very excited and decided to congratulate everyone and establish how high the threshold actually was. So yeah, everyone got theirs read out this time, so that's how I know that the team that we marked happened to come last. And also my aunt really liked their name. Anyway, after the languages round, it was I think it was that one went to Christmas food and drink, which was no hope I was going to be any assistance on that one. So don't have so much to say about in regards to that specific one. There was also one about Christmas art and literature, which was one about which actually featured movies as well, which ended up being my saving grace because I was the one in our group who knew what year Love Actually came out, which I'm actually surprised they even included that one, because in a previous quiz they actually singled out me and said, oh yes, there's some modern music in here, you might actually get some of these references, because normally I'm useless in the music rounds, like full on, completely silent, just drowning my sorrows in apple juice during those rounds. And it turns out their modern song equivalent was AC/DC. The famously contemporary band that are still ever so as relevant as they were before. Kind of reminds me of how the director of the pantomime that I'm in is at one point when he was going over. There's one scene where my character ends up getting surrounded by fans because I'm supposed to be like the Freddie Mercury equivalent, or Freddie Venus in this case, which thus this haircut, by the way. Spoilers. But the way that he actually kind of like emphasized that was, he said, oh yeah, this is like the Justin Bieber of this for you, or whoever is relevant. He said whoever's relevant. He called himself. He realized that the discussion around Justin Bieber specifically had all but diminished in recent years / almost decade. So kind of thing that happens sometimes. And to be honest, like the essence of star powers, it's getting ever so more diluted over the years for various reasons. But I will, go look into that. Consult, Team Theorist on that regard, because they have some videos on the subject. But yeah, back to the subject at hand. There was one more round after that I'm trying to remember right now what it actually was. But I think that was, it was less memorable because we just come off the relatively recent high of one of the, I guess like the internal competitions, the bonus competition, if you will. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but a couple of times whenever we were at my aunt and uncle's house, when they had the larger house before they moved, because that's where we would go every year for Christmas. Which, by the way, we're visiting them on the weekend actually, for the first time in a while. But yeah, when we used to go to them, all the time, the one thing that we did a couple of times was we sang a version of the 12 Days of Christmas. Well, I say a version, it is the version. But we gave each other like different things to say before we had to rise up, basically. So one person would rise up every time, was like 4 calling birds, the next person with 3 French hens, etc., etc. You know how it goes. My uncle ended up, stuck with the role of 5 gold rings because it was exceptionally funny when he got it the first time, and every time we just passed it over to him each year. So we'd done this kind of thing before, but we'd never made it into a competition. The competition specifically surrounded which action would be the best one, basically, or like who could make the best action with their thing. And you might actually think, oh well, that's horrifically unfair because one team gets one attempt to do that, and another team gets 12 opportunities to refine their act. To which I would say yes, but we'll get to that. They had a solution. So yeah, we happened to be 11 pipers piping, so we got 2 attempts. Again, not exactly ideal, but there you go. And we decided to, I just like rolled up one of our pieces of paper and just made it into like a piper, or pipe, for piping, of course. And that's it, that's all we could really do. So we didn't really score very high when it came to that one. But later on, we actually, opportunities struck. And we knew that even though the scores have been tallied because we voted on basically who were the best ones, particularly Six Geese a Laying, they really committed to it actually, especially a couple of the guys who really strained themselves every time that they said Six Geese a Laying. So yeah, props to them particularly, but also Partridge in a Pear Tree. They end up with like a twit-to-woo at the end. There are some people who added extra, onomatopoeia, or did something else afterwards, which didn't quite work so well in the middle of the song actually, because it kind of threw everyone else off the rhythm that we were establishing. But yeah, I guess that was probably their attempt. It must be said that when the second round came over, I guess people had finished their drinks a bit more, let's say, and they were a bit more dedicated to actually, scoring some points, because they had made their own version, basically. So me, I love a good parody. I felt bad for people who did 11 again, because Panel Razan does not fit the rhythm, let's say. So that was not helpful for them. But this time, we got to be number 4, which happened to be 4 rocky roads. I assume in reference to the roads and the accessibility of the actual venue itself. So we all come like, okay, we didn't get much of a chance last time. Let's put our heads down, and we're gonna right. What are we gonna do here? So I kind of did an action, basically bumping over and tumbling. I remember I did some leans. We decided which ways we're gonna go, basically. And I said, let's add as much vibrato as we possibly can. And every time we did 4 rocky roads, it escalated, and people loved it. We soared through the rankings on that one, and we ended up coming second actually in the overall markings, because we just climbed the scoreboard that much. The winners happened to be Partridge in a Pear Tree and the Something at a Surrey Cafe, which were they both got number 1, which I feel like was somewhat unfair, but they did their best. Importantly, one group got 8 gin and tonics, and they just raised their glasses, so they got a lot of points for that. And the usual winning group congratulated us on a job well done on 4 rocky roads. So yeah, I guess that's one way to remember us, aside from, well, for them, I guess, because they've missed both our victories, so they don't know about that. Anyway, yeah. So that was the hands down, the best part. One of our friends actually also filmed it and said, "Oh, I'm not going to send this to anyone apart from you. You can delete it if you want." That got sent into the group chat for the quiz specifically, saying we had to be for Rocky Road. Like, had to be? I don't know. So, yeah. And then the final round was the usual music round, but this time the extra 8 questions ended up, well, they're actually not extra 8 questions, there was 5 in total, but there were 8. The first 8 happened to be a piano medley that they played, and basically we tried to, what was I going to say? We tried to identify which songs were in that mix. I kept on saying them as quickly and as quietly as possible. My aunt couldn't write them down. I tried eventually. They did that 3 times basically. Then there were a couple of other ones that as usual that I didn't know. But in general, the Christmas ones are more recognizable anyway. They also asked you for the original artist versus the performer in the actual thing, which oh boy, this ended up sending me down a rabbit hole. So the song that goes, "We're walking in the air," like that one? Yeah, that song was made famous from the I guess they called it a moviette called The Snowman. And in The Snowman, the actual song is delivered by a chorister called Peter Orty. And here's the thing. So that was the version that came out first. It was the one that was first recorded. It's not the one that made it famous, because after the success of the movie, or I guess maybe in spite of the plans to do it anyway, they made an album release. And the album release, by that point, Orty's voice had broken, so they needed to get somebody else to do that. And so they got rising choir star Aled Jones to do that. So everyone knows Aled Jones as the singer of Walking in the Air. But they did specify the original. So I then consulted the group and said, okay, right, so I'm going to put this down and explain it later. And then it meant the movie version versus the album version, which my aunt went, oh no, they meant the singer. I know, the singer of the movie version or the album version. Then I asked the quiz host, okay, do you mean the movie version or the album version, to see if they actually knew what the answer was. And then they said the same thing, no, I'm looking for the singer. Yes, I know, looking for the singer. I didn't ask who's the singer, that's the question. Of course I wouldn't ask the question. I'm talking about, and then I guess they think I didn't know that there was a movie versus the movie yet or whatever. They thought I was asking about putting down the movie, which was never part of the instructions, so I don't know where they got that impression from. Then again, there was some confusion around later on if they were asking for the original artist for every single one versus just a couple of them. I don't know why they would have changed halfway through, but there you go. So yeah, so my aunt ended up crossing it out despite my protestations and putting Aled Jones's name, which turned out to be the answer. But for the record, Peter Orty came first. He is technically the original singer. But then again, I said, oh, if we win by a point, I'll drop the subject. We ended up being in joint fourth, which I guess plus another 2 points plus Aled Jones, yeah. So we did relatively well considering that everyone performed exceptionally. One group got the first perfect score on the dingbats that they'd ever seen, and one group got 19.5 out of 20, so they narrowly missed out. So all in all, quite the experience. Yeah, definitely one of the most fun quizzes. You know, if only I mean, there can't really be like an activity, you know, to break in the middle every single time. But the fact there was one was, you know, kind of interesting. We also started late and ended late, so, you know, even if I had a stream plan, I would have arrived late for it. I had like a small plan for that, but it was never going to happen because people were staying over, so, you know, one of those things. That's the way it goes, as they say. At least in my family, they do. But yeah, you know, what a way to incite the proper Christmas spirit. You know, a nice outing where everyone makes complete fools of themselves, but also performs exceptionally well on a quiz. And yeah, I think that's probably a good way to wrap up this video. I could like go over a couple other things, but I don't want to spoil a good thing, you know. Leave off the last memory as I embark upon one of the 4 rocky roads, and sign off for now because I honestly have to go and eat and prepare for other stuff I've got later on. So yeah, please leave a like or dislike because your opinion matters, and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And on that note, until next time, farewell.